The freelancer was working in the payroll section and had already obtained copies of Laura and Mr. Collier's pay records, along with time and attendance information. It appeared the dynamic duo was taking off 1 or 2 afternoons a week for a rendezvous. Credit card data Carl obtained from our bank showed where. It seemed Brian Collier was a cheapskate too, because Laura paid for most of the rooms at an economy motel on the outskirts of town. To me, that signified what a cheap, tasteless little affair this was. They couldn't even get together in a decent downtown hotel. The little group of girlfriends that Laura said she was meeting when she went out at night was composed primarily of single and recently divorced women, obviously on the prowl for men. Laura had sworn them to secrecy, but all of them, except for a woman by the name of Kathy, were talking fast and giving lots of details to Carl's investigators. $100 was all it took for most of them to give dates, places, and even approximate times when Laura and Brian would hook up as if by accident. Lately, even that fiction had been discarded. Most of the girls hadn't seen Laura in 2 months. Kathy called Laura almost immediately and told her about being questioned by a strange man about Laura's involvement with the group. She maintained to Laura that she hadn't spilled the beans even a little bit. Kathy was fit to be tied. She thought it was unreasonable, spiteful, and mean for me to be checking up on her good friend Laura. She was right when she assumed it was me. I was the logical person to suspect, of course. Kathy had plenty of experience in such matters. A still incomplete background check on Kathy showed she had been divorced twice. Once because she caught her husband screwing his secretary, and the second time because her new husband caught her with the plumber. For the past few years, Kathy had wandered from man to man. On 2 occasions, she was named as a correspondent in divorce cases where she went out of her way to seduce the husbands. Somehow, this woman had gotten into the same group as my wife in spite of the fact she didn't even work in the same business building as the others. If you're enjoying my content, consider joining my Patreon community. By becoming a patron, you'll get access to full parts of my videos much earlier than everyone else. Plus, you'll be supporting me to create even more awesome content for you. Check out the link in the description to join now. It seemed Kathy was, at least to some extent, encouraging the affair simply because she could. We also knew that, so far, the $100 bribes were holding with the other women because Carl had cloned Laura's cell phone. The other girls responded to Laura's panicked calls with assurances, much like Kathy had given her. That they would actually give her up never occurred to Laura. So, all Laura actually knew was that someone was asking questions, but all of her friends were protecting her secret, she thought. I was again astonished at the quantity and quality of the information Carl's operation had developed in so short a time. Of course, Brian and Laura were rank amateurs and Carl was the quintessential professional. Brian and Laura didn't have a chance. The rest of that week and the next 2 were quiet around our home. Laura had canceled all but Friday's night out on the town, and Carl's agents confirmed the ladies went out to a couple of clubs and danced a while with pretty much anyone who asked. Everyone went straight home afterward. Brian was a good little boy and stayed home with his wife and children. I read a report that suggested Brian's wife wasn't all that thrilled to have him home, and she'd been very vocal while wondering about his sudden change of habit. I was surprised the effect of the investigators questioning the girls in the little group was so short, but I guess there had to be an element of arrogance in Laura and Brian's attitude toward me. After all, they'd been going strong for so long. Whatever it was, barely 3 weeks after the investigators contacted the Friday night partiers, cell phone intercepts began to become more numerous and more explicit. The pair of cheating spouses had decided everything had blown over, and they decided that I had concluded there was nothing going on. During this period, I'd almost moved completely into the spare bedroom. I could barely stand to kiss Laura on the cheek when I came home in the evening, and there was no way I was going to have it with her. She hinted several times that she was amenable to some hot S, but I ignored her. I read Alyssa every book in her little library, and I bought more to go through with her. After I perfected a harsh-sounding, dry cough, Laura didn't question why I was sleeping away from her. Laura never suggested that I shouldn't be around the baby with a cough like that, though. Anyway, Carl and his crew noted the cell phone conversations between the 2 late at night had increased dramatically. On Wednesday of the 3rd week, Laura and Brian arranged to meet at their normal cheap motel. Carl had everyone chomping at the bit to get the goods on the adulterers, and Pete, my attorney, had me primed and ready as how to act. I had Mandy, a 16-year-old girl from down the street ready to babysit Alyssa that night. "Laura," I said, "please don't go out tonight." I was standing in the living room as she was walking out the door. "Please, Laura," I pleaded. I wasn't play acting. I really didn't want her to meet that son of A.B. out there and F him. "Mark." Laura snapped at me. Realizing she couldn't leave with me without attempting to placate me, her face softened. "Look, nothing is going on, Mark. I'm just going out for a few drinks and maybe a little dancing. That's all," she said with a butter wouldn't melt in my mouth expression. She came back to hug me and earnestly look me in the eyes, trying to convince me I was wrong about something I knew for a fact she was going to do. "Laura," I said impulsively, "I know you're meeting someone tonight, but you can't possibly mean as much to him as you do to Alyssa and me. Please, baby, don't go." Laura pulled back and released me. She was suddenly suspicious. She wondered what I knew. "What the hell are you talking about?" she asked indignantly. I had to give it to her. She had developed into a fine actress. "I just know," I insisted. "I know you're cheating on me with someone. You're cheating on me, and you're cheating on Alyssa, and it's not fair to either one of us," I protested. She relaxed a trifle. Her reasoning was clearly that if I didn't blurt out a name, all I had was suspicions. "I am not cheating on you," she said firmly. "I'm getting a little tired of all these accusations, and it's about time to stop," she admonished me. "You keep it up, damn you, and I might just go get some strange man to take care of my needs to show you." I had to look away. I'd have blown everything if she'd seen the sudden rage in my eyes. "Laura," I said brokenly. It wasn't difficult. The fury I was feeling was making it hard for me to speak. "Not another goddamned word," she said forcefully. "I have never, I am not now, and I never will screw another man other than you. There. Does that satisfy you?" Angrily, she turned and walked to the door, pulling on a light jacket over her shoulders. I could see her chest jiggle. She wasn't wearing a bra, and I couldn't see any panty lines on her miniskirt. "Laura," I said a little more calmly, "if you ever cheat on me, that ends the marriage. You know that, right? We talked about cheating and what it does to marriages when Georgia and Sam broke up last year, remember?" For a moment, Laura's hand didn't move on the doorknob. "I told you," she said. Her voice was controlled, but I detected a condescending note in it. "I swear to you, I don't want any man but you, and I never will," she said. "Now I'm late and I've got to go," she said firmly. Without even looking back at me, she opened the door and left. 20 minutes later, I joined Carl and 3 of his best in the room next to where Brian and Laura would soon be. A little spooked by my protest this evening, as well as the suspicious questioning of Laura's girlfriends in weeks past, Brian and Laura were apparently driving around at random, trying to see if anyone was following them. The GPS devices told us that. Actually, there was no one behind either of them. Carl had known of the reservation at the motel a minute or two after it was made because the desk clerk had been paid a couple $100s to call when it happened. Since we knew where they'd wind up, there was no reason to track them. It could have been done, though. If we hadn't known their destination, Carl would have used half a dozen cars to keep pace on parallel streets with Laura and her friend. With the GPS instruments installed in both of their cars, neither of the two would ever have seen their followers. After I'd been there a short time, Laura and Brian drove up almost simultaneously to the motel in their cars and parked in front of room 113. The motel had exterior entrances to all the rooms, and the pair of lovers had only to get out of their vehicles and walk a couple of paces to the door. Neither of them noticed the dark van across the street. They had no idea a high-end digital camera was taping their every move. Laura and Brian wrapped their arms around each other and kissed each other deeply while rubbing their bodies all over each other. Carl was watching me closely. He knew I wanted nothing more than to burst out the door and start wreaking havoc. "Mark," he said quietly, "it's going to get a lot worse before it's over. Are you sure you can stand this?" I sat back down on one of the double beds and licked suddenly dry lips. "Do you have anything to drink?" I asked. He misunderstood and shook his head. "No, but I think you should take this Valium," he said, offering me a tiny yellow tablet. "It'll help calm your nerves," he said gently. I accepted it and then got a soft drink from the cooler that he had, in fact, brought with him. Carl had managed to get one high-end digital camera into the room, hiding it in the air conditioning vent. It was full color, had a full range of motion through an arc of 160 degrees from side to side and 85 degrees up and down. On top of that, it had a 25x zoom that would isolate one hair in the nostrils of any one of these two. Not that Carl expected any need for that kind of detail. Once the duo went inside, the action started almost immediately. Laura had not worn any bra or panties, as I had suspected, and was out of her dress in seconds. Brian wasn't far behind. When they fell on the bed, we turned all the lights in our room off, and two of Carl's men went out into the night. In addition to the camera in the air conditioning vent, Carl had brought two fiber-optic snake cameras with him. One was slipped under the door to Laura's room, and the other over the top of the door. The cameras were less than a quarter-inch in diameter and just a couple inches long. They slid easily through the gaps between door and frame, leaving the transmitter and antenna outside.